Welcome back, AstroGems and Cosmic Seekers. I'm Krys, and today we are diving into one of the most exciting and powerful and sometimes chaotic periods in astrology, eclipse season. Yes, eclipse season is here. This year's season is starting with a dreamy full moon in Pisces and ending with a dynamic solar eclipse in Libra. But I'm not doing this alone. Today, I'm joined by the amazing Emma from the House of Ives. Emma, how are you feeling about this eclipse season?
Hi, Chris. Oh my God, yes, I'm so ready for this episode. Eclipse season always shakes things up in the best way, and I feel like we're all in for some major shifts, whether it's personally, spiritually, you name it. These eclipses are bringing some intense but transformative energy, and I'm excited to break it all down for our listeners today.
Awesome. So let's start with our usual keywords. Now, if we want to sum up eclipses in a nutshell, these are some of the main keywords for eclipses. Eclipses bring this stuff. They're a time to surrender, a time for things that happen that are destined, new beginnings. What are your opinions about the eclipse season keywords?
Yeah, no, I think eclipses are it's faded moments. It feels very destined, but there are a lot of, changes that take place, sometimes unexpected and unpredictable. So surrendering is, I think, a big keyword for eclipse season.
Yes. I know it seems a little scary when you look at the keywords. They're not like the greatest words to
Yeah.
look at. You're like, but really learning the keywords of eclipses prepares you because then when you hear like the horoscope or like the forecast of the eclipse, it's easier for you to navigate the season. So that's the whole purpose of us giving you the keywords is just so you could better navigate it. So before we start and go deep into the, you know, Pisces lunar eclipse and tell you all the aspects that are going on, I wanted to step back and talk a little bit about the nodes. So let's bring in the myth of Rahu and Ketu and the history of eclipses in astrology. So as we dive into what eclipses bring, and I want to start with talking about mythology and the history, specifically Vedic astrology, because they have very rich mythology around the story of Rahu and Ketu, which is the north node and the south node. And these points are the lunar nodes, and they're the key players in eclipse cycles. So Rahu and Ketu were originally one being, but during the turning of the cosmic ocean, they eventually were split into two. And they were split into two after helping the gods churn the ocean. I actually did a whole episode on this, and there's a video that I have that you can check out. And I'm very passionate about this story. I have the nodes like squaring my sun and moon. So the nodes speak very loudly to me. I also have a planet conjunct my south node. So the story of Rahu and Ketu speak to my soul. And so I want you to check that out if you want to get a deeper understanding of the mythology. But this is why I love this explanation of the North and South node, because the Vedic astrology gives it like a rich, deep meaning. There's like so many layers to this story. And I'm just summing it up for the sake of time because we're going to cover a lot more things like we usually do in these podcasts. But in that splitting of the ocean, churning of the ocean, I mean, the cosmic ocean, they got split into two, and Rahu became the head, which is a north node, and Ketu became the body. And the head represents our like unquenchable thirst for desires and material and things, just like it's eating, just like in this picture, just munching on things, wanting, wanting, wanting. And then the body symbolizes what we must learn to metabolize by using our senses. So it's much more spiritual. Yet we have to also release some of the learned behaviors here. Not all of them, some of them. And that's because we learned some bad behaviors with K2 as well. However, not all of them are bad behaviors. It really enhances our intuition. Wherever we have the South Node, we know this area, we know this sign, we know this house, we've mastered it. So the thing is, we also mastered the bad habits of this house, not just all the good ones, not just all the good things of this sign, is bad ones too. And just learning to decipher the good and the bad, that is where the magic happens. So it is about releasing, but not releasing everything, because if we release the entire body, the head is still not complete. The whole purpose is we need to connect the body and the head together so they can work as one. But then the body has learned bad behaviors, and so has the head, right? The head's munching on everything, and that's where the North Node is. Just imagine like Pac-Man, like and then the body, the same thing. It doesn't have eyes, so it's just like sensing things with its body and just learned bad behaviors too. So hopefully I gave you a good picture of this mythology in a nutshell. But this is how it's working in your chart. Wherever we have this little symbol of, it looks like a little horseshoe, one is upside down. When the points of the ends of the shoe are downward, that's the North Node. When they're upward, like the mouth is up, that's the South Node. And just think of them as if they unite together, they're kind of going to form like an infinity sign, which is another symbolism. Not that really doesn't have to do anything with astrology, but another symbolism that shows completion, right? So if we look at this and we put them together and we put the nodes together, it shows that they can unite and be complete as well. So that was that.
Yeah, I think the story of Rahu and Ketu is such a powerful story. Rahu being our North Node that wants to, experience everything, even if it's chaotic or unknown. I've noticed that where we have our North Node or Rahu in our chart, we tend to kind of like obsess with that area of our chart, and we tend to like want to, experience it and want to be in that area a lot more versus K2, the South Node. After learning the lessons from our South Node, it teaches us to let go of what no longer serves us. And that's exactly what happens during an eclipse. There is always an element of something being revealed or something being released.
Yes, exactly. And throughout history, eclipses have been seen as major cosmic events. So even though the nodes move and they're causing eclipses in different houses and they're going to impact you different, and you have your own personal nodes, no matter what, the eclipses come and they evolve these houses for you. And, you know, as the world is being impacted by these eclipses, you're part of the world as well, whether you were alive during the event or not. There's still an effect because there's things that happen that then influence the future, right? So that's why eclipses are something that's tied into like major things that happened in history. And in many ancient cultures, eclipses were seen as powerful omens. People often feared them, believing that they brought about like very dramatic changes, especially changes in leadership. So, back then it was kings. So maybe the king passing away or things like that, or maybe not having an heir to the king, like the king getting too old and not having a son to take over, things like that. They were moments where the veil between the worlds felt thinner and the divine seemed to speak. So even then, the whole world saw this like event, saw eclipses as when, again, talking about the cosmic ocean, when the world was able to speak with the sky, and the veil was thinner between these worlds and how they coexist.
Yeah, and it goes way back ever since like ancient Babylon and Egypt. Eclipses were considered moments of divine intervention. But in modern astrology, we see eclipses as portals of transformation still. They help us realign with our path, especially where the lunar nodes are involved. So, me personally, I like to think of eclipses as the time where the universe takes the wheel and we're just like along for the ride.
Which I
That's
think,
how
yeah, which I think that's an amazing like analogy, or
analogy.
yeah, because you just imagine like you have control of the wheel, right? Like and then from there you're like subconsciously driving. So no matter what, like now you jumped into this Tesla that's self-driving you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
that's why I said surrendering was a big word for eclipses because yeah, like it's the universe that's taking the wheel and you're just along for the ride. So just like enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And we didn't talk about this before we prepared for the podcast, but just, I mean, let's be spontaneous and go a little bit off script. Um, but I mean, is there anything in particular that eclipses have brought to you that you might want to mention?
Um, I'm trying to think. For sure, last year, quitting, was it last year? No, almost a year and a half ago, for sure. Changing paths in like my job, it brought that definitely, but also astrology. When I had the eclipses on my rising sign was when I really discovered and started learning astrology.
Wow. Wow. And I think that's a big step because when you find your purpose, right? Like career or
Mm-hmm.
work or things like that, those are big, major steps for us, especially nowadays. Like we we're very driven on connecting to our midheaven. Like we want to have an ideal career, like
Mm-hmm.
known for what we do. Maybe in other generations or in past generations, it wasn't maybe like it wasn't like that. Maybe they wanted, just to be known as I had these kids, or I was a housewife, or whatever. It was different. Everyone had different goals and aspirations. But now there's just more and more opportunities for a lot more people to really live through their midheaven. And that wasn't like an opportunity for everyone. So for you to discover that during your like eclipse transition, when they were transiting your first and seventh house, that's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Like
Yeah, and they were aspecting my midheaven, but also my nodes as well. They were squaring my nodes.
crazy. See, so they
Yeah.
forced you to do it. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, I know. And the reason I asked you this too, because even with me, when the eclipses happened on my sun and moon, I became a mother. So it was a lot of things that happened during that time, a lot of destined things that happened.
Didn't you meet your husband during an eclipse?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, that's what started it. That's why I said, like, I summed it up, like, at the end, that I became a mother. Like, yeah, it was eclipses on, well, the beginning of the eclipse cycle, I ended a relationship that was very tough. But by the end of that eclipse cycle, which takes about it's typically around 18 months, like a year and a half. By the end, I had met my husband. At that point, he wasn't my husband, but I met him at the last eclipse. So the last eclipse of that cycle, and it was the same thing. It was a Pisces Virgo, like this, like and Aries, like both Pisces, Libra, Aries axis. And the funny part is he's a Libra rising and I'm a Pisces and he's also a Virgo sun. So it's the same
Right.
signs that we're going to be talking about. So it's coming up again. Like for us, it's returning. It's we're not done because we just finished the Aries Libra. Now we're going to go into the Pisces Virgo. But yeah, it was interesting and it changed my life very unexpected ways. And at first, it felt like my world was over, right? A relationship. I was in a relationship for many years. So, like, my heart was ripped apart and I felt broken. But little did I know that that needed to happen so I can find like my true love and, the father of my children. And so that needed to happen, but I also needed to find myself. So yeah, and I have the nodes in Sagittarius and Gemini, so the nodes were also squaring my nodes. So I got pushed, like I was pushed to do this stuff. Yeah, destiny. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Pisces lunar eclipse. Now, this is happening September 17th at 7:34 p.m. Los Angeles time or Pacific Standard Time. So it's applicable anywhere Pacific Standard. Emma's going to talk about Eastern Standard Time. So now that we understand the myth and the history of what eclipses bring, eclipses are always powerful turning points in astrology. They represent endings and new beginnings. A lunar eclipse like the full moon in Pisces coming up on September 17th tends to bring closure, emotional release. So the one on the solar eclipse on October 2nd, this is different. This one's a fresh spark of new ideas and opportunities because it's a solar eclipse.
Yeah, eclipses can feel intense because they tend to speed up the timeline on things we've already been dealing with. They can bring things to light that were hidden or help us make decisions that we've been avoiding. So, whether we like it or not, like eclipses, they push us forward, basically.
True, just like I mentioned, my story about meeting my partner. So, yeah. So, depending on where the eclipse falls in your chart, you might experience shifts in relationships or career, like how Emma mentioned, or personal growth. So eclipses are like cosmic accelerators. What needs to happen will happen. So now let's dive deep into the Pisces lunar eclipse and the aspects that are forming and what we think is going to be the impact or the major signature of this eclipse. Now, I'm going to be giving you a little bit more tailored information for the Pacific Standard Time. So if you're in that time zone, this is going to be applicable to you. The aspects are going to be applicable in general, but I'll talk about the Pacific Standard Time information at the end. So like that, specifically what is for that time. And then Emma is going to then talk about the Eastern Standard Time because we have slight expressions since there is a 3-hour difference and the rising signs change, but mainly the aspects stay the same. But there's some stuff that shifts. So the first thing that we noticed is we have the sun at 25 degrees and the moon at 25 degrees. And Neptune is playing a big role here because Neptune is conjunct the moon. The other thing that I noticed is that Mars is squaring the nodes. So as you can tell, you can see now the nodes are in Aries, but the sun and the moon are in Virgo and Pisces. So like how we had mentioned before, we're not just talking about themes about having courage and also letting go of old behaviors when it comes to the way you relate to others, or maybe having like a behavior like you're codependent, right? Or you need to do things with other people and you really need to step into like, I am able to do this on my own, or I am capable of this, right? Like the I am archetype through the Aries. We are having the moon say, no, let's bring in the energy of Pisces, which Pisces is nothing like the I am. It's more like the unconscious collective. So it's not even the conscious collective, which that would be the 11th house, where you are aware that you're standing up for these causes. Like, I love animals and I'm going to protect animals. That's the 11th house. The 12th house is more like the silent advocate for the better good of everyone. So, how everyone could coexist, which I really think is very complex because everyone's so different. Everyone likes so many things, right? Not everyone likes the same food or same music. You can't please everyone. So it's a very hard task to take on when you want to please everyone or satisfy everyone. But really, this is what's being called for to do, because the North Node and the Moon and Neptune and Saturn, they're all kind of being pointed there. It's like a gate. And this is also a point where it's called Gandanta in Vedic astrology, right? Where the shift, so Neptune's actually in Gandanta, not the moon's not there yet. It's right where the water meets fire. So the last couple degrees of Pisces, and it's turning into fire. And this they call this a very karmic point. So if you're born with any planets there, whatever planet is sitting there has a big karmic agenda. And you usually have very hard lessons around that planet or whatever aspects that point, because it's always learning the hard way. Karmically, karmic means action. So it's learning based on actions that you take. So if you're taking a lot of weird, crazy, irresponsible actions, and it's learning that way. So now we have Neptune at 28 degrees, and Neptune is hard. Neptune is my ruler. I'm a Pisces sun. Now I'm gonna tell you, I want to love Neptune, but I fear him because he's so weird. I can't figure him out. He's so subtle, he's so tricky. He's the god that rules the biggest element on this earth, which is water, the element that we haven't discovered all the way. Like we don't know the depths of this water. We don't know all the creatures that live in this water. It's just it's very misunderstood. Yet water is so soothing, calming. We need it. We're about what, more than 70% water. Yet water is also dangerous. We can drown in it. We could be in the middle of the ocean and there's a tsunami. Like it's, water is crazy. And I love the beach. I love being in a relaxed beach. I just love it. Like that's the thing. Um, but still, like there's also something to respect about the water. It's not something that we can say, oh, everything's gonna be fine. The water is not a threat to us. No, it's like a very silent threat. Like if we're not careful enough, something can happen, an accident can happen. And it's very like, and Neptune does rule that, like they're like sneaky accidents, things like that.
Mhm.
Either way, Neptune being in this point and being involved and being in opposition to the sun, we're not seeing things so clearly. And it's also in a kite configuration with Pluto, Uranus, the sun, the moon. So we have all the outer planets playing with the sun, and Mercury's also playing ball. Like Mercury's also here. So we're seeing a lot of the planets kind of talk, and they're all pointing to this point of like, this is a rising. It's the rising of the chart. And this is more pertaining to Pacific Standard Time, because over here the ascendant is going to be Aries, but not in Eastern Standard Time. But either way, it's still, even if we use a natural layout of the chart, it's applicable. So one thing that I was talking to Emma that I've noticed, and I'm very curious to do a little bit more research on, and eventually we're going to do a podcast on this because this pattern is very important and no one's been talking about it, is the trine that Pluto and Uranus are forming, and they're both sextiling Neptune. This is very unique, and we're not having this again. I looked up all the way to 2084, and I did that because there's a reason. Like I want to look out 100 years out. Obviously, I'm not going to be alive by then, but I wanted to see like, okay, let's see how, like, what's the aspect between these outer planets? How are they looking? So in 2084, there's going to be a trine between Pluto and Neptune. Neptune will be in Leo and Pluto will be in Aries. So and then by that time, I think Uranus is in Aquarius. So Uranus moves faster than both of the other outer planets. So for these planets to align in this synchronicity, it takes thousands of, like hundreds, I could say hundreds of years, maybe even thousands. This is where I need to do my research and see when's the next time they're going to align this way again. So they're aligning also at the end of the signs. They're aligning at the end of the Capricorn zodiac sign, the end of the Pisces zodiac sign, and the end of the Taurus zodiac sign. And the only planet that's in rulership is Neptune, and that's where all the focus is going to. So the later degrees of every sign is all about the ending parts, the culmination, because that means this planet has transited the entire zodiac and it's about to exit. So it's learned it, it's already lived it, especially these outer planets. They spend so much time in these zodiac signs. So we want to say generationally, there's a lot of impact. So now people that are being born, things that are being established, events that are happening during this time, consciously, higher vibrationally, they are going to have a huge impact because they're going to have this signature of this. It's called a minor trine. So of this, it's a trine between Uranus and Pluto, and then a sextile from Pluto to Neptune, and then Neptune then sextiles Uranus. And again, people, this doesn't repeat often because Uranus moves. Uranus then speeds up because he takes 80 years to go around the zodiac versus the other planets. I think and I don't remember the exact amount of years for Neptune, but I think it's 100 and oh my God. I can't, my brain's fried right now. Over 150. I know Pluto's like 200. So, you know, they take too long that Neptune kind of goes a few times before these guys kind of continue to have these aspects. So there's also cycles in astrology, and this is when planets do make a conjunction, and then within that conjunction, they relate to each other. So they'll make an aspect to each other. So right now we're having the Saturn Jupiter square, but we had the Saturn Jupiter conjunction in Uranus, and not Uranus, in Aquarius at 0 degrees. And that was a big old thing. I mean, a lot of people started turning to astrology during that time. We had so many astrology fans because it was such a big thing, which was amazing awakening because I mean, Aquarius rules um astrology. So it was amazing, but now we're seeing like that aspect, the aspect of that cycle come to life between these planets, right? So now they're aspecting, they form aspects that their cycle doesn't end until they meet again. So once Jupiter makes another conjunction to Saturn, then that it forms another like another cycle. So the outer planets take longer to do that. This means the Pluto Uranus aspect. This is a trine to when they conjunct together. And that was we didn't check the exact time, but we believe it was during the transit of Pluto in Libra. And I didn't check the exact date, but I know for sure they didn't meet when Pluto was in Scorpio because I was born during that generation and Uranus was already in Sagittarius. So they were semi-sextile to each other. So there is no way they met then. And so then the sign before is when they met, and Pluto takes a long time in Libra, and Uranus is faster. So I know they met in Libra sometime. Be my guest to correct me. Maybe they met at the end degrees of Virgo. Don't know. We didn't check, but either way, this is the trine. This is
I'm checking right now.
the first.
Sorry, I'm checking right now, and it looks like it is towards the end of Virgo.
Towards the end of Virgo. Okay,
Yeah,
so then it's the
seven,
end of,
yeah,
okay,
17 degree Virgo. Yeah.
okay, great.
Mhm.
So thank you for checking. So that's what in 1970 what? 1960, 1970,
1965 and up. Yeah,
65. Yeah.
1965.
It's a long
Mhm.
time. So everyone 1965, that generation, it's a trine from that aspect that they carry in their chart. It's big. So something's happening for them. Something they're doing, it's a trine, it's a cycle that's opening up for them. Maybe they're liberating, they're finding liberation. Uranus is about liberation, Pluto's about power. Maybe they're in positions where um they're finding stepping into their power because of all the work that they've done, or retirement. It could be that point too, that they're having these conversations. And I know there's very hard conversations right now about people not able to retire, but if they really worked well with this aspect and they saved appropriately, they're going to be able to retire very well. So this is a good aspect. It all depends on how this aspect is placed in their chart. But either way, it's in this chart itself, it's really good. It's placed very well. Both Pluto is trining the sun, Uranus is trining the sun. Neptune's the only one that's kind of not placed that great because it's in opposition, but it gets helped by Pluto. Pluto's sextiling it. Uranus is also sextiling it. The moon is nice to Neptune. Saturn kind of grounds Neptune. So, and then Saturn's house of joy is the 12th house. So in this chart, this is applicable to Pacific Standard Time. It's helping anchor. Um, Not really fond of the sign of Pisces according to astrologers, but I find that Saturn actually does okay in the sign of Pisces. But I mean, we need to do some more research on that. Let's see. I feel like it functions equally like a 12th house placement because Saturn finds liberation in both. If you look at what Pisces rules, it's very connected to the 12th house matters. So I feel like it functions pretty good in the sign of Pisces. I mean, I've seen Saturn in other places where it causes a lot more damage. So I'm not gonna say that it's like a bad placement for people. But either way, Saturn's a tough planet either way. By house, Saturn's making a trine to Mars, which we want to make sure the malefics are playing nice because we always want to make sure the benefics are playing nice too. So we have the bad planets playing nice. We have the good planets playing nice because Jupiter is making a trine to Venus. So, it's kind of all looking really nice, yet there's a lot of releasing because we're looking at the axis of the 1st and 7th and also the 6th and 12th. So it's bringing in like the 1st and 7th, which is the self and relationships, especially if you're married or you have contracts, or it's like needing you to revise things, to change things, to look at these things and like move some of this energy. And the part of fortune is at 11 degrees. So take note of that because the next eclipse is going to be at 10 degrees. So what you start now, you continue working with for the next eclipse. And then the sun is in the sixth house of work and your daily routines. And this is your active karmic work. These are your actions. So the sixth house is what you do daily. And what we do daily are our actions, our habits. And these habits are how we're working out our karma. So it's a very karmic house. So the sun's here is like work your karma out. And then it's opposing the planet of karma, and the moon's also a very karmic planet too. So it's kind of asking us like, hey, you need to start working towards your purpose. What is that purpose? So you're going to have a lot of people, especially people born during the generation like the 19 like early 80s, like more like mid 80s, come like they're gonna have this, they're having the Neptune square. They're gonna start questioning their purpose because they're having that Neptune square, and this all this stuff is gonna bubble up in them like bloop, 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 because it's already highly aspected. So just say if you were born with Neptune and Sagittarius right on the galactic center, 28 degrees, 27 degrees, 26, and then this eclipse happens, you're gonna be questioning your existence. It's okay. It's just a phase. Just relax. Go ground. Go ground. That's what I advise. Just go outside, ground, relax. It's a phase. That's why they talk about the crisis, the midlife crisis. People survive this. The reason why we go through this stuff, first, we have that Neptune square, but it's because things end up being an illusion. We're like, oh crap, we're halfway through our life. Like, wait a minute. I want time to reverse. Boom, boom, boom. We can't. So, what is it that we need to do from this point on so we can enjoy it? And then, when we look back, we may regret, like if we don't start enjoying our life from this point. Like if we didn't enjoy life before and we don't stop now and really try to enjoy it from this point on, we're gonna regret it. Like I know because I've heard this from my mother. My mother's much older, and she's told me like even my age, like I just turned 40 this year, and she's like, "Ooh, what I would give to be 40." And in my head is like, "What I would give to be 21 again." Like so for her is like I wouldn't even want to be 21 if like she will go back to 40 because she's like 21 I was still too young and naive, but 40 I was just right. Like she was like she felt just right, like mentally for her, at least her, maybe some people would still want to go a little younger, but for her she was like mentally I was right, and physically I still look good too. So I would go right to 40. And I'm just like, wow. But I'm 40 and I feel like I want to be younger. So what I'm trying to say is don't do that. Like enjoy the moment because we could really waste the future. We still have way more, but I think that's why that midlife crisis happens because we start reflecting like, what have we done with our lives? We're not even there. And we still have a long time. We still have a lot of days to wake up. But when you start doing the math, and I'm a numbers person, so I like doing that. There's 365 days, 365 times I have to wake up. So if I do it like that, it feels like more time, then I feel like I have a lot more time that I can live versus if I just say, oh, maybe I have another 40 years. Like, right? So I kind of try to like make it more. So like that, it seems like it's longer. But I think that's why people have this midlife crisis because they start reflecting like, wait, I'm not there yet. I haven't done everything I wanted to do. And then we have Jupiter making an aspect. So I think Jupiter is exaggerating things too, because it's starting to make that applying square to Neptune. It's not perfected. And I think Emma had found the date that it goes retro. Do you remember the date, Emma?
Yes, it was October 9th that Jupiter goes retrograde.
Yeah, October 9th at 21 degrees, right?
21 degrees, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was at 20. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily form the exact square, but it's still an orb. So we're gonna have this aspect kind of like be sneaking in the background while we're also having a square from Neptune. So there's Pisces, Gemini, mutable energy is gonna keep on working with us while the sun moves away, yet this eclipse season, eclipses last for a while. And the reason I'm bringing this up right now is because we also looked at the next eclipse season and then the Virgo lunar eclipse that happens the beginning of 2025 in March is at 23 degrees in Pisces. So it's almost the same exact degree. So again, it's bleeding, going through. It's going through there, like it's not going to just be this eclipse and that's it. No, it's already showing us that what's happening now, we're going to still
Like a
kind of work
preview.
through it. So it could be a good thing. Yes, exactly. It's a preview. Yeah. It could be a good thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be bad, but it's saying that it's still going to last through that. Again, I met my partner during an eclipse, but at first I felt like my life was over. But once I met my partner, I was like, oh, like in a Disney movie. So, so it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. Now, Venus is in rulership. That's another planet is in rulership. So both of the planets that rule love, Neptune is the higher octave of love. He's not all that bad. When Neptune wants to be sneaky, he's crazy, and that's when I don't like him. But when Neptune wants to be creative, artistic, like a musician, I love that stuff. I'll take my Neptune all the way. But the other stuff, I don't like Neptune. But does have good qualities. So the higher octave of Venus is Neptune, and we have both of those planets in rulership, and Venus is actually conjunct Spica, which is a very auspicious star. So this eclipse gets blessed with that star on there. So it's showing that women, Juno's also very close, but not exactly, but it's showing women, marriages, things like that. They're kind of getting blessed through this connection of Venus and Spica. And then Jupiter is also making a trine to that. So then voyages, teachers, mentors, people in higher education, they're also getting that blessing. And then Jupiter is one of the rulers of the eclipse. So it rules the moon, and Neptune will kind of, that doesn't rule Neptune, but it's influencing Neptune because they co-rule each other. And then the other ruler of the eclipse is Mercury, which is in Virgo, and he's also in rulership. So I found that interesting. And then this is where it's like this is the only time that you see this, that when so Mercury rules Virgo and Mercury's exalted in Virgo, but actually Mercury is ruling Jupiter. And Jupiter is squaring Mercury, and this kind of cancels out like a little bit of the debilitation of Jupiter, because the planet that is ruling Jupiter is actually in a sign that it rules. So it ends up helping Jupiter out a little, even though Jupiter is in a sign that it doesn't necessarily like to express, or like just say play the role. Like it's an actor and it needs to play a certain role, and it's like I didn't want to play the taxi driver, but it needs to play that role, right? Like because of the fact that Mercury is in a sign that it rules, Mercury the director said, okay, let me give you another role, and maybe upgraded his role, and that helped Jupiter out. So the rulers of the eclipse are in square, so they're not really playing that well, yet they kind of help each other out. And these planets, they're not like the worst to be in square, so it's not like the worst. Now this is going to be the longest explanation of the eclipses because the other two we're going to breeze through them. I don't know, Emma, do you want to add anything before we move to the Miami one? Anything that I missed?
Let me see. I think you covered pretty much all the aspects. Um, yeah, I think you covered everything.
Okay, great. And then I think lastly is I did mention that Mars was squaring the nodes. So Mars is actually applying to a conjunction with Sirius. And the nation's sun is conjunct Sirius. And that's at uh 13 degrees, right? 13 degrees in Cancer. So right here it's at 7, so it's not there yet, but by the time we get to the next eclipse in Libra, it will be there, which I think it's a big deal because right now, what are we doing? We're making decisions about the nation. So Mars is kind of charging through that and it's impacting the sun, the nation's sun. So that was interesting to see. And the sun in Virgo talks about the working people, the working class. And I think that's a big topic about this election. It's, the working class. They're focusing a lot on the people, the lower income levels, which is the working class. So let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, so this is the chart for Eastern Standard Time, like Miami time. Um, like Krys mentioned, the aspects are the same for this lunar eclipse. We're just going to experience it differently in terms of the placement of the houses and the rising. Um, in Pacific time, it was an Aries rising, and for us on the Eastern Coast, it's Taurus rising, and it's actually making a nice trine to the sun in Virgo. It's making a supportive trine. Um, where where the previous chart focused more on the 6th and the 12th house that Krys was talking about, our day-to-day routine, the work life. This full moon, this lunar eclipse for us on the East Coast is focused on the 5th and the 11th house, the 5th house being the house of creativity and joy. And it's actually one of the Dharma houses.
Yes, it's a Dharma house, and it's actually one of the easier ones to express because it talks about all the things fun. Like the fifth house is the house of creativity, leisure. So that's why it's one of the Dharma houses because you get to do all the fun things in this house.
Yeah, and with the nice aspect to the ascendant also, it's kind of supporting it. However, it is Uranus is right on the ascendant, so we can always expect a little element of surprise with Uranus. The nodes, the south node is placed in the 6th house, and the north node in the 12th. So it is still tying in what we are talking about earlier of that like day-to-day routine, maybe releasing little habits that we do that are no longer beneficial for us, and focusing more on surrendering and our more of like the unconscious and our subconscious mind, with the north node being placed in the 12th house. Anything else you want to add,
Yeah,
Krys?
this kind of reminds me, especially with the nodes here, like that we need to let go of habits that are not allowing our spiritual growth. Like, like overworking ourselves because we're going to get burnt out. So this house, like the South Node transiting the sixth here is saying like all work and no play is not good for the mental health. The North Node being in the 12th house, right? And that's one of the things that I'm a big advocate of. Like, you have to schedule in some time for like mental breaks, like mindful breaks, right? Grounding, walking in nature, smelling a flower, like even sniffing essential oils, like all that stuff might sound so dumb and stupid. You might laugh about it, but it actually helps us. Like we as humans have been doing this forever. Like before we created all these extra jobs that we do now, we would just kind of forage and smell flowers and like smell plants and like we would do all that and work with the earth and smell the dirt. And so our brains are wired to crave that stuff. And it's not until the, later centuries, like the last couple hundred years, that we stopped doing that, like having this deep connection with nature. And by us not having that connection, we're not giving ourselves mental breaks, and that's the 12th house. So even though, like, the axis shift a little bit, like the signature is pretty similar to the first chart because the nodes are bringing in this signature the same way. Like it's saying like you need to balance work and your breaks, right? You need to balance that so you won't burn yourself out. And we were just talking about burnout. Like Emma was mentioning that, like, hey, I'm kind of working a lot. I'm taking a vacation soon. Like, we have to take these breaks. You have to take planned vacations. Or if you can't take a planned vacation, fine. Some people don't have the time or can't afford it or whatever. But what I do is, especially like me, like, I recently took some time off and my mom helped me out with my boys. And my mom's like, I need a vacation now because my boys' schedule is crazy. They play basketball, they have to go to practices, they have 3 games on Saturdays, 3 games on Sundays, and they're sometimes back to back, sometimes they're spread out. Like we have one in the morning, one in the middle of the day, one in the afternoon, depending on if they win, if they don't win. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So my mom was the one taking them, and after she was like, oh no, I don't know how you do this. And I was like, I know, like it's a lot, but the kids are having fun and it keeps them busy and I burn all of their energy out. So when we come home, they're not hyper in my house. So I'm okay. And while they're on the bleachers and I'm like cheering for them, you best believe I have my headphones in and I'm listening to meditation music. I sometimes have my sunglasses on and I close my eyes and no one knows what I'm doing. And it's funny, one of the moms the other day said hi to me. She's like, hi, I didn't recognize you without your sunglasses on because that is my disguise. I put my sunglasses on, I close my eyes, and no one knows I'm meditating. But I have to sneak it in. I'm like multitasking because I'm there for my kids. Obviously, I'm not meditating the entire time, but I'm sneaking in a little 5, 7 minute meditation or a guided meditation or whatever so I can center myself and also be present for my children. But this is why I'm doing this because I'm also choosing to place them there. But then what about my mental health, right? So I know that I'm not gonna have time to do it later because I'm gonna have to come home, wash their uniform. It's all sweaty. I have to cook something, blah, 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 blah. There's like the list goes on. So that's why I do it this way. And I'm okay with that because I get my mental break. So the sixth house is how efficient are you with your daily routines? The 12th house is how are you giving yourself mental breaks because it rules your mental health. So in a world that we are like encouraged to hustle and bustle, like we really need to pay attention to that 12th house, especially the sign that's on that 12th house, because you're going to burn yourself out if you're not caring for that planet that rules the 12th house. Oh, and don't let me get started with people that have planets in the 12th, because if you have planets in the 12th, you really need to nurture those planets because you'll get burnt out. They'll, they need help. That's a whole other
I
topic, huh, Emma?
I feel like you're talking specifically for me because like you've mentioned, I was literally telling you that I'm on the verge of a burnout and I do have planets in the 12. So, yeah.
Oh, you do. I forgot. I
Yeah,
forgot about that.
I have two planets in the 12. I have Jupiter and
Yes,
Mars
you
in the
do.
12.
You have 2 planets.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah, I totally forgot about. I don't have planets in the 12, so sometimes I get, I forget about other people's experience. I have planets in the eighth, so but the ruler of the 12th is the moon. So whenever there's an eclipse, I mean, I really feel the 12th. But yeah. So lastly, we wanted to show you the Virgo lunar eclipse. I had showed you earlier, but just so you could have another, snapshot. We're not going to talk about this. Um, but this is the beginning of the 2025 eclipse, and it's almost at the same exact degree as the September 17th, 24 eclipse that's about to happen. So take note, everything kind of changes a little, but the sun's very close. We're having the eclipses at 25 Virgo Pisces. This one's 23 Virgo Pisces. So 2 degrees off, but now the nodes are at 27. And look, Venus is at 7 degrees, right where the node is at 6, right? Look at that. So again, Venus bringing in the conversation. Now Venus is in detriment. It's not in this chart, it's not in Libra. So we'll talk about this later, but we wanted to point it out because this is part of the Aries Libra cycle. It kind of got merged with Virgo and Pisces. They kind of gave us a little glimpse into the future of the next axis they're going to be working on. And one thing that Emma mentioned, she's like, what? Mars is still in Cancer. Remember, the end of the year, we're going to have Mars retro in Leo, and then it goes back all the way to Cancer. So, yes, by this time, it already stopped and it's no longer in retro, but now it's going forward. So, yeah, we're going to have Mars. Actually, we haven't even checked when Mars goes into
Leo.
post shadow. It might be in post shadow. I don't know. I don't know. It might be entering it. So we need to check on that too. Maybe that's the next podcast we do, because Mars retro or something else. We think Mercury retro, but no. No. And we're gonna do the Mercury retro. We're still gonna do the Mercury retro special, but Mars retro, I think out of all of them, that's the one. That's
Yeah,
the one.
I don't like
Luckily,
Mars retro.
yeah, luckily it doesn't happen that often, but that's the one. And
Yeah.
we're having that one at the end of the year. Okay, now the Libra solar eclipse, this happens October 2nd, 2024 at 11:48 a.m. PST. And now the sun and moon are at 10 degrees. And this is a little bit no, so the Mercury was probably, hold on. I didn't check. I'm not sure. Yeah, Mercury's gonna Kazemi after. Kazemi after. So that's also big because a little bit after the eclipse, we have Kazemi aspect and Mercury is direct. So it also brings a lot of insight. Now it's not exact, but or it's only like 1 degree off. So it's already applying. It's already good. Um, Mercury's not in a sign that it rules, but it's okay in Libra. It could be a little passive aggressive or indecisive in the sign of Libra, but it functions all right. Now, Mars at this time, it's already at 15 degrees, so it's 2 degrees off the conjunction to Sirius. So it already went through the nation's sun. So things like that means the entire eclipse season, the beginning to the end of it, like Mars was working on the nation for eclipse season. So yeah, just prepare for that. Now, by this time, Mars is making a trine to Venus. So it's an applying trine because Venus is much slower than Mars, and Mars is actually slowing down as well because he's about to go retro. So Venus is gonna eventually catch up and make a trine to Mars and then move to Sagittarius before Mars even ever gets past, I think, the first couple 5 degrees of Leo. And then it goes retro. So that's actually good because we had in the other chart that Venus wasn't necessarily squaring Mars because it had already squared Venus had already squared Mars, but it was squaring by house. Um, so let's see, Mars and Saturn are already in exact trine. So at the beginning, the first solar eclipse, it was a trine by house. Now it's an exact trine, which Saturn represents, things of authority, things of, people that are have like more control over you, the government, things like that. And now they're like, playing ball. Mars is kind of holding, I'm sorry, Saturn is holding down the general, which is Mars or the action. So this is actually good because it's forming a water trine. So if you can see this, Venus, trine Saturn, trine Mars. So this is really good, especially water, to use your intuition, but yet kind of slow down the way you do things. So because Saturn likes to slow things down. So kind of get the bigger picture and then respond. Mars, you always want to take action. You always want to take the action no matter what. But when Saturn is involved, you want to do it in a slower fashion because Saturn wants you to see everything like as it is and be the most practical about it. Versus Mars sometimes is very unpractical and is like, just do it. And it's like, oops, I shouldn't have done that. Right. So Saturn kind of helps Mars out because Mars can get the job done, but sometimes it doesn't know what job to get done. So Saturn could help Mars. And Venus, I mean, Venus doesn't necessarily like to work, but Venus brings good luck. So she's just there to kind of like help out, be like, oh, okay.
Sit there and look
And she's
pretty.
being ruled by Mars in this influence. Yeah, exactly. Like, I'll go ahead and make sure this, the final touches are nice. Like, yeah. Um, so yeah, so that looks it's good. The aspect that I talked about that I spent a lot of time on, the trine with the outer planets sextile to Neptune is still there. You can see it more clearly. Um, let's see, but mainly the here the concentration is this square from Mars to the eclipse. And because it's the south node, and we had talked about it, the south node is about letting go, but it's about letting go identified behaviors that we no longer want to work with. So one of the things like the signatures with Libra, every sign has good and bad qualities. And one of the not greatest qualities for Libra is codependency. However, a lot of people that have codependency issues don't know they have them. They struggle to identify that. They're like, I'm not codependent, right? But the minute they actually consciously are aware of it, and they're like, oh, snap, I am codependent. But what can I do to change this? That is when they find the true treasure because it's not about saying, oh, let me ignore the fact that I was ever codependent. That's like letting go of the entire South Node. No, you embrace the lesson and you're like, yes, that was something I did. What did I learn from it? What is it that I'm going to change? And how am I going to evolve this? It's about evolving the lessons, and that's how you connect the dragon again. That's how you connect Ketu and Rahu and put them together. If we throw away the south node, if we throw away the lessons of the south node, we will never connect the north node, and you will still be unfulfilled. So I hear it all the time. Oh, go to your north node, live your north node. That's not the case. You will be unfulfilled if you don't connect them. You have to connect them because the south node does give you a lot of valuable lessons. And it's a theme in our lives that we've been working on over and over and over. Now, when it comes to an eclipse, it's talking about things in that, like it's giving an opportunity, like opening a vortex or like thinning that area so you can identify. So an example for me, since I'm a Leo rising, this is my third house. So it can bring topics about, my siblings or my communication style or even my car. And actually, I was just thinking, I don't want to buy a new car, but it had seated during Mercury retrograde. Maybe it's about time I start looking into getting a car. And then I said, let me wait until the new ones get released because I'm not going to buy a new car. I want to buy like a new used car. So when the new year, since I'm so close for the 2025 cars to get released, once those get released, the other models become way cheaper. So I'm like, I'm close to that time, so might as well just wait the few weeks, right? So it could be something like that, that during this time I decide, okay, let's start going car shopping. Now, would I buy a car during an eclipse? I don't know. I don't think so. But I wouldn't mind shopping for one because the energy of the purchase is not going to be there until you purchase it. But I wouldn't mind like shopping and feeling things out and like looking around and seeing my options. So doing like my research and learning from the past and learning like, what why I want a different type of car or what. And then one of the things that I do want a bigger car because my kids are bigger. That's like the thing. Like my car's already older, it's paid off, but like honestly, the other day when I looked at my kids in the back, they were all crunched up and they're big guys. They're almost 6 feet tall and they're like pretty big. So I'm just like, oh, I need a bigger car for them. Poor guys. Like they're not gonna get any smaller. They're gonna keep growing, I think. So I'm just like, I think I need to get a better car, a bigger one. So that's what I'm looking at, like to get maybe like a more comfortable one. Because right now I have like a tiny SUV that serves its purpose, but um, yeah. So it could be themes like that, and it's third house rules cars. So I don't know. I haven't really sat down for me personally to see how I'm gonna play with it, but it can bring themes like that. So you kind of want to see where this aligns in your chart and then kind of start writing down. This is what I do. I write down the themes of that. Like the house represents this, 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 this. Libra represents this, 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 this. And then I kind of sit with it in meditation and be like, oh, okay, this is kind of what is coming to me, or this is kind of what it feels that is going to happen. And then that's how I get some insight. I don't know. I don't know if you have a process of how you do that.
Um, yes and no. In a similar way, I just don't sit down and write it. I'm more mental. So I think about it in my mind and then yeah, I do sit with it, but more mentally than just writing it down. That's how I process it.
Awesome. I do both, but when I started writing. Now I can just do mental, but when I first started, I'm a writer. I like
Right,
writing
right,
things
right,
down.
right.
So I will have,
Yeah, that totally makes sense. When I first started,
yeah,
I was writing it down too, and then I was like, yeah, I don't have time for this anymore.
yeah. But it's just so much easier when you do it like if you can do it mentally from the beginning, great. But a lot of people, because they're learning, they kind of want to see it like because it's easier for them to remember and to process it. So for me, that's why I did it that way. It was easier, but now I mean I can do this on the fly. I don't have to write it down. I could just look at the chart. Again, I'm at the bleachers looking at the chart. Hmm, okay,
Yeah,
this feels like this to me. Uh, so um so yeah, I don't know anything else you want to mention about
yeah, I
this chart. Maybe let me switch it to yours.
I do want to mention though, I checked for the Kazimi. It actually happened 2 days before on September 30th, at 8 degrees of Libra.
Okay,
Yeah, just to
so it
clarify that.
happened before.
Mm-hmm.
So that means Mercury is faster than the sun. Okay, it's a fast Mercury. That's actually really good. So
Yeah,
then we get clarity before during eclipse season. That's even better,
yeah,
honestly. Okay, really close to the nodes too.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Really,
thank you
really
for
good.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, the aspects are still the same for us on the East Coast, here in Miami. Um, This chart, though, is a Capricorn rising. Um, and the solar eclipse is very high up in the chart in the 10th house. So this is all about our goals and our careers and our ambitions, and really sitting down and thinking, what we want to, what our goals are and the steps that, we need to take, but also figuring out, what doesn't work for us anymore to be able to, release those patterns that are hindering us for our growth. With the ruler of the solar eclipse in Libra being Venus, Venus is very close to the MC. Again, still bringing in that career goal oriented focus with this eclipse. Anything
That's
else you want to
hilarious
add?
because,
Go ahead.
yeah, it's funny because what comes to mind for me is just I keep on like just getting this like, so I know how Florida's gonna vote. This isn't changing at all. Like there's some states that end up kind of changing from
Flip-flopping.
election to election.
Mm.
Yeah, but for sure, the interest of Florida is like, don't mess with my money.
Yeah.
Don't mess with my retirement. And very conservative, which is the first house. So the conservative is the Capricorn energy, and that's also connected to the 10th. That's the don't mess with my money part because that's your career, right? The 10th house. And then the retirement is the 11th house. And then Venus rules the second house. Well, not in this chart, but Venus naturally rules the second house. So that she's really hard, high on the MC. So it's like, don't mess with my money. And Scorpio is other people's money. So it's like, nope. Yeah. Versus over here in the Pacific Standard Time, the ascendant is exactly the same, not to the minute, but to the degree, very close to the nation's ascendant. Now the eclipse is happening in the 5th and 11th house. So there's more focus here on long-term investments. They're more focused on that. It's more on investments, period, because even Mars is in the 8th, Pluto is in the second house, and then the ruler of the first is in the 7th. So it's like contracts and investments. So over here, we're seeing that the energy is quite mutable and changeable, yet we have Saturn kind of anchoring the 4th. So we have a similar type of conservative energy at the 4th. So a lot of the like home energy that's coming from Pacific Standard Time, not just California, Pacific Standard Time, all along this West Coast is saying no, we want to be a little bit more conservative. We want a lot of changes. So the people here are quite more mutable. So most likely we're gonna have a mix on the West Coast, and we don't have a lot of planets. And a lot of planets, I mean a lot of states on the West Coast that stay in Pacific Standard. We have what, California, Washington, Oregon, Nevada is the West Coast. But then the other ones they change to like other time zones.
Yeah, like
What
mountain
else?
time and
Yeah,
central.
mountain. So it's not a lot of, yeah, and Hawaii is not Pacific Standard Time. So I think the the East Coast, that looks like it looks like a lot of the a lot of the coast, the East Coast is probably going to be majority conservative. I can't wait to see. Let's see what happens because
Yeah, let's see what happens.
yeah, based on this chart, it's showing like it's like don't mess with my money no more. But then Mars, like Mars is in the 7th fighting. So the other party, whatever party this is, it's fighting. It's putting up a fight.
Mhm.
Wow. Interesting. Um, yeah, let's see what happens. And it's really when we did the thing on the elections, but it's November, right? No, when do we vote?
November 5th, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah, we did one on elections, so
Yeah, check that out.
yeah. Okay. So lastly, this is the Aries solar eclipse that ends this Aries Libra eclipses. It's not the end of eclipses, but mhm. And
Yes, in the spring on March 29th, we will have one final eclipse in the Aries Libra axis. And it's happening at 9 degrees of Aries. And if we remember, the solar eclipse in Libra is 10 degrees of Libra. So 1 degree off. So again, it's gonna bring up stuff from this past eclipse that's happening in October, and then closing out the Aries Libra eclipses for good. We're not going to talk much about this chart. I know Mercury is retro, Venus is retro. We'll talk about that in the spring when we do the edition for those eclipses. And Mars is still in Cancer, of course, still.
yes. Yes, yes, yes. So why are eclipses important in astrology? Hopefully, we've explained this. It's all about the nodes, the north and the south node. These are the points where the moon's orbit crosses the ecliptic, and they represent destiny and karmic lessons. The north node is where we're headed. It's our future growth. The south node is what we've learned and need to evolve so that we can reunite the dragon. Many astrologers say we have to let go of the south node. To some extent we do, but we also have many gifts from the south node. These gifts can be hidden treasures, or it can be our crutches, and that's what eclipses help us with, because the lessons we've learned with the south node are needed so we can grow into our destined self, which are the lessons of the north node.
Yeah, and during eclipses, the sun and the moon, they align with with the lunar nodes, creating powerful moments of alignment for us. It's like the universe giving us a nudge in the correct direction, whether we're ready for it or not. Like I mentioned, like it's the time where the universe takes the wheel. So right now, the North Node is in Aries, and it's all about stepping into independence, bravery, and leadership, while the South Node in Libra is asking us to release codependency and people pleasing. They've been in this axis, Libra and Aries, for the past year and a half. Well, for the past year, it's going to switch to Virgo and Pisces in January of 2025.
Yes, exactly. So eclipses push us towards where we need to grow, even if we're resistant to it. That's why they can feel so intense, but they also provide clarity, especially around areas of life where we've been stuck or we're unsure. And with the upcoming full moon in Pisces conjunct the Aries North Node and the Virgo Sun conjunct Libra South Node, we're being asked to balance the spiritual with the practical and the mystical with the grounded. So, how to ride the tide? Here are some tips. The first thing to remember is to slow down. Eclipses can stir up a lot of emotions and changes. So it's important not to make any rushed decisions during this time. Let the energy just settle first before taking any action.
Yeah, it's also great for reflection. Eclipses are a moment of revelation. So, journaling or meditating on what's coming up for you can help us gain more clarity. So, don't be afraid to let go of what's no longer serving you, because eclipses are perfect for clearing away old baggage.
Exactly. This is a great time to trust the process, even if things feel chaotic. Now that the universe is guiding you towards you're destined or destiny, like just know that you're being guided where you need to be. The grounding practices to me are the best. That's what I recommend. Walking in nature, yoga, or simply like deep breathing can help you stay centered. So, one of the things that I'm not a big fan of during eclipses is rituals. It's a big no-no for me. I'll do things like cleansing and releasing, so rituals like that, but nothing like intentions, like manifesting rituals. And then reason being is because the energy is so unpredictable, and then we already have with these eclipses, we have Uranus already very involved. We don't know the outcome. Like if we set intentions, we might get something we really didn't like, and you might regret it later. So I just don't manifest during eclipses, even during the Astro Vibe tribe. That's like my membership. I don't manifest during that time. We just do releasing practices, things like that. So that's how I handle the eclipses. The easiest thing to do is just do like a guided meditation, or actually, you know what? This gave me the idea. I have a Mercury retrograde meditation. I'm gonna make a eclipse meditation, and then I'm gonna post it. So if anyone's interested, they can listen to that, and they can listen to it. It's gonna be made for like any type of eclipse. So you can always listen to it during an eclipse. If not, whatever else you'd like to do, but I'll put it out there for free and post it on YouTube. I know a lot of people liked the Mercury retrograde meditation that I made. Um, so hopefully you'll like that one. Now, that's all we have for you today, AstroGems. We hope this episode helped you understand eclipse season a little better and gave you some guidance on how to ride the cosmic waves. Thank you so much for joining me, Emma.
Thank you, Krys, and thank you to our listeners. Remember that, eclipse season is a time for growth and transformation. So don't be scared if things start to change. Just embrace the change and trust the journey. Remember to surrender. Oh, that
Yes.
rhymed.
Yes, and make sure to follow us on Spotify, YouTube, Insta, or whatever social media platform you use. We're probably on there. So follow us for more cosmic insights and let us know how you're feeling during the powerful eclipse season. Until the next time, keep shining astro gems. Bye.
Bye.